I hid my daughter-in-law's wedding gown because she refused to wear the gown that the women in this family have always worn. And now, she's calling off the wedding because my son took my side. My son's wedding isn't happening. The cake has been paid for, the venue deposit is non-refundable, the invitations have all been mailed and stuck on people's refrigerators, and I have 2 closets full of decorations sorted by table number and colour theme. The dress, both dresses, really, are hanging in garment bags in my house, and still there will be no wedding. She called it off. Over a dress. I know people will say it's more than that there were deeper issues and boundaries and all those modern words. I'm not stupid. I've heard them. But if you strip everything else away, what actually happened is this. My future daughter-in-law refused to wear the wedding gown the women in our family have always worn, and I tried to protect what our family stands for. Now everyone is acting like I've committed some outrageous crime, instead of what I really did, which was try to keep something beautiful from being thrown away. I suppose the easiest way to explain it is to start at the end and work backward. 2 weeks ago we were supposed to have the rehearsal dinner. Instead, my son sat at my kitchen table with his face in his hands, while his fiancée, no, I suppose I should start getting used to ex-fiancée, packed up the last of her things from the apartment they used to share and left town with her parents. He kept saying, "I don't understand how we got here, Mom, it was just a dress." And I told him as calmly as I could, "It's never just about the dress, sweetheart, not for women, not for families, she made a choice." He didn't argue exactly, he never does, he just looked tired, which is understandable, he's always been sensitive, kind, loyal, the sort of boy who never caused trouble growing up, who never slammed doors or screamed "I hate you" at me like some teenagers do. We're close, he and I, not in some unhealthy way people like to imply, just, we understand each other. I've always been the one who could see when he needed guidance even before he knew how to ask. That's all I was doing this time too, gidding, protecting what matters. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should explain about the gown. In my family, the wedding gown isn't just a dress, it's practically a member of the family. My grandmother sewed it by hand in 1947, out of ivory silk she'd saved from ration coupons and a neighbour who owed her a favour. They didn't have much money back then, and she made that dress in the evenings after work, pricking her fingers until they bled. My mother told me she cried the first time she put it on, not because it was perfect. It wasn't, the hem was a little uneven, but because it meant she had made something with her own hands that would start a new life. My mother wore it in 1972, with the sleeves altered and a little lace added to make it modest but not old-fashioned. Then I wore it in 1991. We had it cleaned and preserved carefully each time. Names and dates are embroidered in tiny, neat stitches on the inside lining. Esther 1947, Margaret 1972, Elaine 1991. It is the single most beautiful thing I own. I didn't have daughters, I had 2 sons. I made my peace with that a long time ago. I love my boys with all my heart, but there is a particular kind of ache when you realize you will never pass down certain things yourself. So when my older son married, I was delighted when his bride agreed to wear the gown. She looked radiant. We added her name to the lining. The pictures of the 4 of us, my grandmother in black and white, my mother, myself, and then my daughter-in-law, are one of my most cherished possessions. It felt like that line was continuing, that I hadn't failed my grandmother by only giving her grandsons. Then my younger son, Daniel, proposed to Claire. I was happy for him, truly. She seemed different from the women in our family, but I'm not prejudiced against different. She's very modern, very career-oriented, always talking about projects and clients and flying off for work trips. She doesn't really cook, she orders in a lot. She wears those boxy blazers that I personally think look a bit severe, but that's the style now, I suppose. From the moment he introduced us, I could tell she was particular. She doesn't like when people make decisions for her, even small ones. When I offered to host their engagement party, she insisted on choosing the caterer herself, even though I've planned more events than she's been alive. Little things like that. Not rude exactly, just insistent, determined to do everything her way, even when someone with more experience is trying to help. Still, I tried to be welcoming. She was marrying my son. That makes her family, and in our family that means something. About a month after they got engaged, I invited them over for dinner. After dessert, I brought out the garment bag. "I have something special to show you," I said, laying it gently across the sofa. I could feel my heart pounding a little, the way it had when I showed it to my older son's wife. Claire raised her eyebrows. Is that the gown? I said. The one the women in our family wear when they marry into it. I unzipped the bag and eased the silk out, careful not to snag it. The light from the lamp caught the fabric and made it glow, the lace appliques almost three-dimensional. It still takes my breath away. It's beautiful, she said to her credit. She reached out to touch the sleeve. Is this vintage? My mother laughed softly, Maury-like antique at this point. I explained the history. My grandmother's story, the ration coupons, the tiny initials inside. I didn't cry, but my voice did catch a little when I talked about seeing my reflection in the mirror wearing the same dress as my mother. I have always believed there is nothing more important than knowing where you come from, and I thought she would see that. It's a symbol, I told her. In this family, when you marry in, you don't just become someone's wife. You become part of something that came before you and will continue after you. This dress is how we show that. Claire listened. She even smiled in the right places. But there was a tightness around her mouth that I recognized, from work, from meetings where someone has already decided and is just waiting to tell you no as politely as possible. It really is gorgeous, she said. And I love the story. I've actually already started looking at dresses with my mom. That's wonderful, I said immediately. Of course you should make a day of it with her, but you won't need to buy one, dear, this is yours now. She paused. I don't know if this is exactly my style. I laughed because I thought she was kidding. No one thinks it, their style at first. It's not about the cut, it's about what it means. We can have the sleeves altered, we can remove some lace if you want something simpler. We've updated it for each bride. It changes a little, but it stays the same where it counts. Claire exchanged a look with Daniel. He shifted in his seat. Mom, he said gently, Claire has always wanted to design her own dress. Like since she was a kid. I turned back to her. Oh, we can absolutely have a seamstress make some changes, like I said. We're not unreasonable, we just… No, she interrupted, still polite but firmer. I mean, I want my own dress. I've had this image in my head for years. Something really simple and modern, no lace, probably no sleeves. Straight neckline. I'm actually meeting with a designer next week. It felt like someone had slammed a door in my face. So you don't want to wear it at all, I said before I could stop myself. She shifted, clearly uncomfortable. I appreciate the offer, I really do, but I think every bride should choose her own dress. It's important that I feel like myself on my wedding day. And you don't think you could feel like yourself in our family's gown, I said. I kept my voice calm, but I could hear the steel in it. It's not that, she said quickly. It's just I've been dreaming about this for a long time, and my mom has too. She's always said she wants to take me dress shopping. It's kind of our thing. I wanted to say you can do that any time. You can dress up and play pretend in a bridal boutique every weekend for all I care. But this moment, this dress belongs to us. Instead I said, I understand you want your mother involved, of course. But there are other ways to do that. She could come to the fitting when we alter the gown. We can take pictures of the generations. It would mean a great deal to my mother and me. Claire looked at Daniel again, as if asking him to step in. He looked back and forth between us, clearly miserable. Maybe we could talk about it some more, he said weakly. We don't have to decide right now. I took a breath, smoothed the skirt of the gown where it lay across my lap, and zipped the garment bag closed again. Of course, I said with a smile that felt tight on my face. We have time. But in my heart I already knew. She had made up her mind. And she had chosen herself over the family she was supposed to be joining. I didn't give up, that's not who I am. When something matters, you don't just shrug and say, oh well. You keep trying, you find another way. Over the next few months I tried to approach it gently, from different angles. At one family dinner, when we were talking about the seating chart, I said, you know, when your brother and his wife got married, I remember how moved she was when she saw her name embroidered in the lining of the gown. She said she'd never felt so welcomed into a family before. Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth. That's sweet, she said. Another time, I invited her over for tea when Daniel was at work. I laid the dress out on the bed, the way a bridal shop does, with the bodice propped up so she could imagine herself in it. Just humor me, I said, patting the mattress. Try it on once. If you still don't feel it's you, we'll drop it. She hesitated at the doorway. I don't want to give you false hope, she said. It's not about hope, I replied. It's about experience. You can't decide from the hanger, just see how it feels for me. She did put it on, to her credit. She stood in front of the full-length mirror, the silk skimming her figure, the lace framing her shoulders. Even she couldn't deny how lovely it looked. I saw her soften a little as she turned side to side. It fits really well, she admitted. I smiled. I had it let out a bit in the hips last month, just in case. Her shoulders tensed again. You altered it before I even tried it on. It's just a few seams, we can always take them back in. I just wanted you to have the option. She stared at herself in the mirror for a long moment, then shook her head slightly, as if clearing it. It's beautiful, she said again, more carefully this time, but it's not me, I'm sorry. Why are you sorry, I asked, for not wanting to be part of this family? Her eyes flashed. That's not fair. Of course I want to be part of the family, I just want to also be myself. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. In this family they're not, I said gently. That's the point. We keep what matters and we bring ourselves to it. We don't throw out the old just because something shiny and new comes along. She sighed. Elaine, I understand this dress is important to you, to all of you, but my wedding dress is important to me. I have always pictured designing one with my mom. It's one of the only truly personal parts of the wedding. Everything else is about everyone else, guest lists, seating charts, menus. The dress is the one thing that feels like it's just mine. I could hear the rehearsed speech in it. Boundaries, autonomy, all those buzzwords people my age are supposed to be afraid of. I wasn't afraid, I just found it sad. All this insistence on being just mine, as if that was some great achievement instead of being part of something larger. I didn't argue that day. I simply said, we'll talk again, and helped her out of the gown, running my hands over the silk to check for snags. After that, I tried other routes. I asked Daniel to talk to her. Just explain what it means, I said. Maybe she doesn't fully understand. He rubbed the back of his neck the way he does when he's stressed. She understands, Mom. She just doesn't agree it's her dress. It's your wedding too, I reminded him. It's your family name she's taking. Don't you want her to be part of our history? Of course I do, he said quickly. But I also want her to be happy. She's been talking about her dream dress since before we even met. And what about my mother? I asked quietly. She's waited 30 years to see another bride in that dress. Do her dreams matter less because she's older? He winced. That's not what I said. No, I said, but that's what it sounds like to me, to her. He looked torn. I'll talk to her again, he said finally. I don't know exactly what he said, but I know they had an argument. Claire called me the next day. I need to be very clear about this, she said. Her voice was polite, but there was a thin edge to it. I'm not wearing the family dress. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, but my decision is final. I'm asking you to please stop bringing it up with me or with Daniel. I've hardly mentioned it, I said, genuinely surprised by the accusation. I've just expressed how meaningful it would be. I haven't demanded anything. Your expressions feel like pressure, she said. When 3 different relatives at Easter made comments about how excited they were to see me in it, after I'd already said no, that didn't happen by accident. I blinked. They're excited because they care. That's what families do. They share their hopes. I cannot control what everyone says at a holiday dinner. Well, someone clearly told them I was going to wear it. I didn't see the harm in that. I may have said it was still being discussed. People like to imagine things. It makes them feel involved. She exhaled. Look, I'm not trying to be difficult. I know this is special to you. But this is my wedding, my body and my dress. I'm setting a boundary here. Please stop asking, stop hinting, and stop involving other people in this. My answer is no. The language was so clinical it made me cringe. A boundary, as if love was something you lock behind a fence. I hear you, I said carefully. I won't mention it again. And I didn't, not directly. But I also couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I walked past the closet where the gown hung, preserved and perfect, it felt like a reproach. Like I was failing my mother, my grandmother, my own younger self in those photos. Like I was letting the dress die. And I kept thinking about the day my older daughter-in-law had put it on and burst into tears, saying, I feel so included. How grateful she had been that we had something so special to offer. What kind of woman turns away from that? The answer is, a woman who doesn't really want to join your family, just orbit around it on her own terms. Claire chose her dress. A designer one, of course, very clean lines, strapless, not a speck of lace. It looked like something a model would wear to a fashion show. It was fine, pretty enough, cold to my eye. She brought it over to our house to store about 3 weeks before the wedding. That part was my idea. You're closer to the venue, she said, so it actually makes sense. And our apartment is tiny, I don't want it in the same closet as our winter coats. It will be safer here, I agreed, carefully not putting too much emphasis on safer. We have the garment rack in the guest room, no one will touch it. She hesitated a second, then nodded. Okay, thanks. When she left, I hung her dress next to the family gown. They were almost like a before and after picture. One intricate, one stark, one made with sweat and sacrifice, one made with money and a Pinterest board. It made my chest ache. For a while, I just looked at them, side by side, and hoped that seeing them together on the day of the wedding would wake something up in her. That she would suddenly realize what she was turning down. But as the days ticked by, I felt more and more certain that no such revelation was coming. She would walk into that guest room on the morning of the wedding, put on her smooth, impersonal dress, and walk down the aisle as if she were starring in a magazine spread. Our gown would stay on its hanger, reduced to a piece of scenery in someone else's event. It felt wrong, like a story with its ending ripped out. The idea came slowly. I didn't decide in a single moment. It was more like sanding down a rough edge until the shape beneath reveals itself. What if she simply didn't have that option? What if circumstances, unfortunate but unavoidable, made it impossible for her to wear the dress she'd chosen? She would still get to marry the man she loved in front of everyone. The day would still be beautiful. And in that moment of crisis, we could offer her something even more meaningful in its place. Is it really so terrible to help people see what's best for them? A few days before the wedding, I mentioned to Daniel that I'd been thinking of different contingencies. I always plan for emergencies. It's part of why things tend to go smoothly when I'm in charge. What kind of emergencies? He asked. Oh, what if it rains, what if the caterer is late, or what if something happens to her dress? Spills, tears, anything, we should have a backup plan. There's always safety pins and sewing kits and stuff, he said, distracted. He was doing something on his phone. Yes, I said, and we also have an entire perfectly good wedding gown hanging in the next room. He looked up then, suspicious. Mom. I'm not saying sabotage it, I said, a touch offended that he would even think that. I'm just saying if something unfortunate were to happen. Like what? Accidents happen, Daniel, I said. Sometimes the universe steps in where people won't. He stared at me. Promise me you're not going to do anything weird with her dress. The word weird strung. I would never hurt Clea, I said, and I meant it. I'm trying to prevent hurt, that's what you don't seem to understand. She's going to look back on this decision one day and regret not honoring your family. I'm trying to spare her that pain. He sighed. She's an adult. She gets to make her own choices, even if we don't agree. You can imagine how that felt, hearing my own son talk to me like some meddling outsider. I raised that boy. Every decent thing in him came from me. And yet here he was, essentially telling me to stand by and watch him and his fiancée make a mistake that would echo through family photos for generations. When you love people, I said quietly, you don't just stand by and watch them hurt themselves, you step in, even if they don't thank you right away. He shook his head. Please, just don't do anything, okay? Just let the wedding happen. I smiled and patted his cheek. The wedding will happen, I said. I'm only making sure it happens the right way. He didn't push it further. That's the thing about Daniel, he says what he thinks, then he defers to people he trusts. He trusts me, he always has. 2 days before the wedding, when the house was buzzing with relatives and last-minute flower deliveries, I took Clea's dress off the rack and moved it. I didn't damage it, I want to be very clear about that. I didn't pour red wine on it or cut it up the way some people are saying now. I simply removed it from the equation temporarily. We have a large, cedar-lined trunk in the attic where we store winter blankets. I folded the dress carefully, layer by layer, placing tissue between the folds to prevent creases, and laid it gently inside. I did the same with the veil. Then I closed the trunk and locked it. The key went into my jewelry box. Looking at the empty hanger in the guest room made my heart race for a moment, but I took deep breaths. This was just buying time. A pause. By the time anyone realized the dress wasn't where it was supposed to be, it would be the morning of the wedding. There wouldn't be time to track it down. there would conveniently be a beautiful, meaningful alternative hanging right there. She would put it on, Daniel would see her. My mother would cry, we would embroider her name that evening. And years later, she would tell the story of how a silly wardrobe mishap led to the most meaningful choice of her life. That was the picture in my mind. Of course, life rarely cooperates so neatly. Daniel found out first. The night before the rehearsal dinner, he came over to drop off some programs. I was in the attic putting away a box of childhood toys. We'd had to clear out space in the garage for folding chairs, when I heard him call up the stairs. "Mom's you up there?" "Yes," I said a bit too quickly. My hand was still on the trunk. He came up halfway, frowned at the dust on my skirt. "What are you doing up here?" "Just tidying," I said. "You know how I am, I can't stand clutter." His eyes flicked to the trunk. "Is that Claire's dress?" The trunk was closed, of course, but I suppose the guilt must have been written on my face because he went straight to it and tried the lid. When it didn't budge, he straightened slowly, looking at me in a way he never had before. Not angry exactly, appalled. "Mom," he said, "tell me you didn't." "I didn't hurt it," I said quickly. "It's perfectly safe, safer than it was in that drafty guest room, frankly." He stared. "Why?" "Because she's making a mistake," I said. "And because sometimes people need a nudge to do the right thing. She'll still marry you. She'll still get the man, the party, the photos. The only difference will be the dress, and think of how much that will mean to Grandma." "That's not your decision to make." He ran a hand through his hair, genuinely upset. "You can't just hide someone's wedding dress because you don't like it." "Hide is a strong word," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm protecting it. We can give it back to her after the wedding. She can resell it for all I care." He actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Do you hear yourself?" "I hear you blaming me for trying to honor our family's traditions," I said quietly. "I hear you taking her side against your own mother when all I've ever done is support you." "That's not fair," he said, echoing something his fiancée had said to me. "The modern generation is very fond of calling things not fair whenever they're confronted with the consequences of their choices." "Is it fair to expect us to pretend our history doesn't exist?" I asked. "Is it fair to ask my mother to watch another woman walk past her in some strapless nothing while our gown gathers dust?" He closed his eyes. "This is exactly what Claire was talking about. You don't respect her boundaries." "She doesn't respect this family," I snapped, then forced myself to take a breath. Softer, I said, "Daniel, sweetheart, I know you're under a lot of stress. Weddings are overwhelming, but you're not seeing clearly. In 10, 20 years, what will matter more? That she got to have a dress that matched some idea she pinned on her phone, or that she became part of something that started before she was born?" "Both matter," he said, voice hoarse, "because they both matter to her." He looked suddenly very young to me, like the boy who used to come home crying when someone at school had been mean. Back then, he would always look at me and say, "What do I do?" And I would tell him, I would fix it. Now he seemed to be asking the same question without words, and my answer was the same: "Let me handle it." "This is too much for you right now," I said gently, touching his arm. "You're exhausted, you're worried, you're being tugged in two directions. Let me carry this one. I will talk to Claire in the morning before the rehearsal. I will explain that there's been an issue with the dress." "An issue," he repeated, incredulous. "And that the only feasible solution is to wear ours. Once it's on her, once she sees herself, once she sees your grandmother's face, she'll understand. She's not a monster. She's just young and stubborn. We've all been that way at some point." He pulled his arm away. That hurt more than any words. "This is wrong," he said. "I know you think you're doing the right thing, but it's wrong. You have to put the dress back." "I will," I said, "after the wedding." He opened his mouth, closed it. I could see the war inside him. Loyalty to me, love for her, his own conflict-avoidant nature. He has never been good at making hard choices. I have always seen that as my role, to absorb the sharp edges so he doesn't have to. "Don't tell her," I said softly. "Please, not yet, just to trust me. I have never steered you wrong." He looked at me for a long time, then down at the locked trunk, then back at me. "I don't like this," he said finally. "I know," I said. "No one likes surgery either, but sometimes it saves your life." That analogy seemed to disturb him. "If this blows up," he said, voice low, "it's on you. If she chooses to make it into a blow-up instead of a beautiful story, that will be her choice," I replied. "All I can do is offer the right path." He didn't say he supported me, But he also didn't take the key or unlock the trunk. He walked downstairs, shoulders hunched, and I stood in the attic breathing in the cedar smell and telling myself over and over that someday they would thank me. Claire discovered the missing dress the next morning. The rehearsal was scheduled for noon. She arrived at the house with her makeup bag and a garment bag with her rehearsal outfit, chatting with her bridesmaids. I stayed in the kitchen, giving her space, as they like to say. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps racing down the hallway, then her voice. "It's Elaine." I turned, drying my hands on a dish towel. "Yes, dear." Her face was pale. "Where's my dress?" I blinked. "In the guest room closet where you left it." "No, it's not," her voice shook. "I just checked, it's not there." "Oh," I frowned as if confused. "That's strange. Maybe someone moved it when we were setting up the gift table yesterday. I'll help you look." We checked the guest room together. The gown rack stood empty except for the family dress, pristine in its bag. "It was right here," she said, gesturing wildly. "I left it here, I zipped the bag myself. Where is it?" "Calm down, dear," I said. "Panicking won't make it reappear." She whirled on me. "Did you move it?" "I may have had someone shift it while we were reorganizing," I said carefully. "With so many people in and out, I didn't want it to get dirty, but don't worry, it's in the house somewhere." "Somewhere?" Her eyes were wide. "My wedding is tomorrow, Elaine. My dress is not somewhere. It needs to be exactly where I left it." Her tone was sharp, disrespectful even. I chose to ignore that, focusing on the bigger picture. "Nothing will happen to your wedding," I said soothingly. "You are still marrying my son in less than 24 hours. A woman like you can adapt. That's one of the things I admire about you." She stared at me. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, moving to the other garment bag, "that we are very fortunate to have this option." I unzipped it with a little flourish, revealing the family gown. "Imagine the story you'll be able to tell your children, how everything went wrong with your dress, but in the end, fate put you in the gown that truly connected you to your new family." There was a long, terrible silence. Then, very quietly, she said, "What did you do with my dress?" "I just told you," I said. "It's safe, but there isn't time to go hunting for it today. We have a rehearsal to get to, guests arriving, a schedule. You know how venues are, they charge extra if we're late." She didn't blink. "Where is my dress?" Her voice had gone flat, almost calm, which somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. "I put it somewhere secure," I said. "The details aren't important, what matters is—" "The details are extremely important," she cut in. "You took my wedding dress without my permission, that's not unimportant." "It's in this house," I said. "Nothing has happened to it, you're acting as if I burned it." "How do I know you did?" she shot back. "That hurt, because I am not a monster, Claire. I am your future mother-in-law. I love my son. I want what's best for his marriage. I would never destroy anything that meant a great deal to you. I'm simply pressing pause on a bad decision." She laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "A bad decision? Choosing my own wedding dress is a bad decision now." "When that choice comes at the expense of family unity, yes," I said. "Think about what you're saying to us by refusing this gown. You're telling us you don't value what we've built, what we're offering." "I'm telling you I have a right to wear my own dress," she snapped. "One that I paid for with my money, that I chose with my mother. You had no right to touch it." "I had every right to protect my family," I replied. "You are marrying into us. That comes with responsibilities, not just perks." She stared at me, then at the family gown, then back at me. "This is insane," she whispered. "Give me my dress now." I shook my head. "I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" "Won't," I said, because I have always believed in being honest, even when it's difficult. "Not until after the wedding." Her jaw clenched. "Daniel knew about this, didn't he?" "He was conflicted," I said, "as any good man would be, caught between the woman he loves and the mother who raised him. But in the end, he understood that this was bigger than a piece of fabric." "So he agreed," she said, nodding slowly. "He took your side." "He took our side," I corrected, "the side of your future children's heritage." There was that silence again. I could hear the faint chatter of bridesmaids in the living room, oblivious. "Okay," she said finally. Her voice was very calm now. "Okay, here, what's going to happen? You're going to tell me where my dress is. I'm going to get it. I'm going to take it back to my apartment. And then I'm going to decide whether I can still go through with marrying into a family where people think this kind of behavior is acceptable." I felt a chill. You're going to throw away your entire relationship with my son over a dress. I'm not the one throwing anything away, she said. You did that when you decided your tradition mattered more than my autonomy. There's that word again, autonomy, as if she were a car. You're overreacting, I said. You're stressed, you're emotional, and you're saying things you do mean. Once you're standing in our gown, once you see how right it feels. I am not wearing your dress, she said, each word clear and hard. Not now, not tomorrow, not ever. I realized then that she was serious, that she would actually destroy my son's happiness rather than bend. For a moment, I was speechless. This had never, in all my careful thinking, seemed like a possible outcome. Who chooses to be that dramatic over something so simple to solve? I'm going to talk to Daniel, she said, turning toward the door. Do, I said, please, he'll remind you what this is really about. She left the room. A minute later I heard raised voices in the hallway, then a door slam, then footsteps leaving the house. When Daniel came into the kitchen, his face was grey. She's calling off the wedding, he said. I felt the world tilt. She wouldn't. She is, he said. She says she can't marry someone whose family doesn't respect her boundaries. She's going to her parents' house. I stared at him. And what did you say? He swallowed. I told her you didn't mean any harm, that you were just trying to do what you thought was right. Good, I said, relief rushing through me. So she'll calm down, you two will talk, this is nerves, that's all. He shook his head. She said her decision is final, she's packing a bag right now. For a second I imagined going over there myself, marching into their apartment, sitting that girl down and explaining, slowly and carefully, that adults do not throw temper tantrums like this. That marriage is about compromise, about recognizing that your life is no longer just yours. But I knew that no matter what I said, it would be twisted into something ugly. People like her always find a way to make themselves the victim. Instead, I put the kettle on. She'll realize what she's throwing away, I said. When the day passes and she's sitting in her parents' house in jeans instead of walking down that aisle, she'll feel it. What if she does, he whispered. Then she wasn't the right person for you, I said, as gently as I could. Someone who can cut and run over one disagreement. One gigantic violation of trust, he corrected, but there wasn't much heat in it, just exhaustion. I didn't respond to that. There was no point trying to talk to him in that moment. He was hurt, scared, angry, hungry too. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. I made him a sandwich, put it in front of him and let him cry. The wedding was officially cancelled that afternoon. Claire's parents called everyone. I'm sure their version of the story is full of words like sabotage and control and emotional abuse. People love those terms now. They absolve everyone of responsibility for their own overreactions. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. My sister, what on earth happened? Daniel's older brother, Mom, tell me you didn't actually hide her dress. My mother, Elaine, come over now. I didn't reply immediately to any of them. I needed to collect my thoughts. Everything I had done had been rooted in love, in a desire to keep our family's legacy intact. That hadn't changed, no matter how they tried to spin it. When I did go to my mother's house, she was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. Sit, she said, pointing to the bench. I sat. She stared at me for a long time. I told you how much that dress meant to me, she said finally. I did not tell you to weaponize it. The word strung. I was trying to honor you, I said, and Grandma, I didn't want the line to end with me. And now it might end with you anyway, she said sharply. Because do you really think any future daughter-in-law will even come near that thing after this? I flinched. That thought hadn't occurred to me. You're taking her side. I'm taking your son's side, she said. He loves that girl, loved, whatever, and you put your need for a symbol over his actual happiness. That's not fair, I said, a phrase I usually reserve for other people's excuses. I was thinking of his future too, his children, their sense of belonging. Belonging built on coercion isn't belonging, she said, it's compliance. I didn't agree, I still don't. When I wore that gown, no one had to force me because I understood. I respected my elders enough to put my preferences second. Has that concept really become so foreign? My older son called that evening. He was more diplomatic than my mother, but the message was similar. I get that the dress matters to you, he said. But you took it too far, Mom. You can't interfere like that in someone else's wedding. It's not someone else's wedding, I said. It's my son's wedding, my family's. Do I really have no say at all? A say, sure, he said, but not the final say. That belongs to the couple, you know that. Of course I know what people say in theory. In practice, couples make terrible choices all the time. That's why marriages fall apart, because no one older and wiser is allowed to step in and say, no, that's a bad idea. Claire's mother left me a voicemail I still haven't listened to all the way through. The part I did hear included words like disgusting, psycho, and restraining order. Very classy. Most of the extended family has gone quiet. I interpret that as neutrality, which to me suggests they see both sides. If they truly believed I was the monster Claire is painting me as, they'd be cutting me off entirely. They haven't. Daniel is quiet. He's staying with me for now. He says the apartment feels empty. Sometimes I catch him looking at the locked trunk in the attic, then at the family gown, now back in its bag, and I can see something like regret flicker across his face. But when I try to talk to him about it, he shuts down. Not now, Mom, he says, I can't. So I focus on making sure he eats, that he sleeps, that he knows he is loved. I remind him that people who walk away so easily were never meant to stay. That somewhere out there is a woman who will truly want to be part of a family, not just have a performance with a custom dress. My friends are divided. A few of them think I went a little overboard, but they also say things like, I understand though, kids these days have no respect for tradition. One even admitted she wished she'd put her foot down when her daughter wanted a black wedding dress. I didn't, she said, and now every time I look at the pictures I wince. Exactly. Others are harsher. One coworker told me bluntly, you can't treat your adult son like he's still in high school, it's his life. I smiled and changed the subject. People who don't have children love to give parenting advice. And now here I am, trying to put this into words because I am tired of everyone telling my story for me. I did not act out of malice. I did not wake up and think, how can I ruin their wedding? I woke up and thought, how can I protect what my family stands for when someone is trying to erode it? Maybe my methods were not what people today would choose, but that doesn't make my motives evil. If Claire had truly loved my son in the way a marriage requires, she would have been able to see past her own stubbornness for one day. One day, that's all we were asking. To wear a dress steeped in love and history for a few hours, in exchange for a lifetime in a family that cherishes her. Instead, she chose herself, again. And somehow I am the villain. I refuse to accept that. I did what mothers have always done. I stood guard at the gate of my family and tried to ensure that what comes in is worthy and willing to be part of us. I may have been more direct about it than some, but at least I was honest about what matters to me. Daniel will heal. He's young. He has his whole life ahead of him. Perhaps next time he'll choose someone who understands that autonomy doesn't mean trampling on everything and everyone that existed before you. As for the gown, well, it's back in its place now, carefully hung, the silk smoothed, the lining waiting for another name. Maybe that name will never come. Maybe the line really does end with me after all. If that happens, I will know that it wasn't because I didn't try. I can live with people calling me controlling or dramatic or whatever other label they want to toss around. What I couldn't have lived with was sitting at that wedding, watching my son's bride float past me in a meaningless white tube of fabric, while our gown hung forgotten in the dark. I acted out of love. If others choose to call that something else, that's their problem, not mine.